Welcome to the Growing Tall Poppies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nat Green, and I'm so excited to have you join me as we discuss what it means to navigate your way through post-traumatic growth and not just survive, but to thrive after trauma. Through our podcast, we will explore ways for you to create a life filled with greater purpose, self-awareness, and a deep inner peace. Through integrating the many years of knowledge and professional experience, as well as the wisdom of those who have experienced trauma firsthand, we will combine psychology, accelerated approaches, coaching, and personal experience to assist you to learn, to grow, and to thrive. I hope to empower you to create deeper awareness and understanding and stronger connections with yourself and with others, whilst also paving the way for those who have experienced trauma and adversity to reduce their suffering and become the very best versions of themselves in order to thrive. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I'm super excited today to bring you our next guest on the Growing Tall Poppies podcast. It's my absolute pleasure and privilege to welcome an amazing lady who I was blessed enough to work with many, many years ago when we shared an office in the late 90s. We've actually known each other, therefore, for 30 years, and our paths have crossed again more recently in the past 5 years or so. I'm really excited to introduce you to her today so you too can get to know this gorgeous lady. She's had a lifetime of traumatic experiences and has been the most amazing example of a tall poppy, constantly shining her light brightly despite all her adversity and making a difference in the lives of so many people. She's very generously offered to share her experiences and many words of wisdom with us today. So let me introduce Sue Harrod to you all. Welcome, Sue.
Hello, Nat. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your podcast, because I think it's so important for us to share our experiences and our wisdom and our learning.
Thank you, Sue. And you have many, many amazing words of wisdom. I'm really excited and grateful and honoured that you recognise the importance of this podcast and the mission that we're on to help people heal from their trauma and move into post-traumatic growth. And as you and I were talking a little bit before we got on today, we were talking about the importance of trauma, mental health conditions, etc. So let's just start. If you could give us a brief introduction of who you are and what you do in the world.
So who am I? Well, that's a good question. And we haven't got enough time to talk about who I am, because I'm multifaceted. What do? I work as a mindset coach, also as a personal trainer. I'm a powerlifter, I'm a park runner, and I am a person of connection with others. So that's why I'm very multifaceted, because depending on who I'm with will depend on what part of me comes out to be involved in the conversation and the connection with that individual. Yeah.
Very true. And that's a beautiful way to summarize who you are, given what we know of each other and the experiences we've had. So as my listeners know, I get guests on who are people who've experienced trauma or adversity in their life, and we talk about how they've navigated their experience and then look at any lessons or learnings that they have as a result of what they've been through. So I'm just wondering if you could share an overview in as much or as little detail as you like around what has happened to you and what you've been through.
I think the significance of us meeting together was that around that period of time, mid-90s, late 90s, I had finally got a label to what happened in my life. I had lots of periods of my life that I did not have memories of. So up until about the age of 10, I really don't remember. I have my mother saying, do you remember so-and-so, or do you remember this? And I truly didn't remember it, but I remembered the story that people told me, which was really different. I came out to Australia as a almost 13-year-old, again, in a situation of not really having memories, but just being in the moment and having chunks of my life that I just didn't know anything about. I went to college as a teacher, trainer, student, and at that point in time, I was sexually assaulted, but I have periods around that I don't have memories of. I know things happened. Yeah. I would finish up in environments or locations and didn't know how I got there. Okay. I was involved in a relationship which eventually progressed to being who is now my ex-husband. And I would have periods of time that I'd be, for example, in Cowra and then finish up in Blaney and not knowing how I got to Blaney. So there were huge chunks of what was happening for me. And to me, it was just what happened. Like I didn't have a name. I didn't have, I need to change this. That was just how my life was.
Acceptance of sorts that this is who I am, this is what happens to me, not realizing that this wasn't what everyone else experienced. It was just your normal. Yeah.
This was my normal. I eventually came to Dubbo, and eventually through various things that happened, I was in a not so nice relationship, and there was lots of things that happened around there and different things in my family. Eventually I got into relationship counselling. And so going into a new marriage, it just felt right that I go and start to investigate why things would happen for me, why I would drive out of my home not realising I was and finish up in the fetal position on the floor of a car, not knowing what had happened, why it happened, how I'd got there. And it was time to start to look at it. And through being involved with an amazing lady who lived in Medlow and helping on my new marriage, the realization of what was being held within me, and the realization at that point, which was then called multiple personality, it's now called dissociative identity disorder, the realization that is how I'd navigated my life. So I got a teaching degree. I had got a relationship counselling qualification. I had done accounting. I had a son who is on the spectrum and a whole range of things, but I just navigated it by using these personalities that were with me. So I get on stage and I do public speaking, and I was sort of aware that I would sit in the audience being quite anxious. It was almost like I took that hat off and put another hat on as I walked up the stairs to then do public speaking, and not knowing that in fact was a change of personality.
So the switch would take place and you would take on that new persona, really, but not having the recognition and the awareness that was happening.
Yeah. And eventually through time, that doesn't happen. I would say I still believe it happens, because I still believe it's a coping strategy, depending on where I am. But I don't see it, and I probably never have seen it as something to go, oh, that's terrible, I've got a mental health condition, isn't this awful? I've always felt that I've been really blessed, because it allowed me to navigate some fairly crazy, non-productive things in my life to be productive and to engage and share. So for me, instead of having that mental health condition, isn't that terrible, let's fix it, I feel really blessed in having had it. So it coped throughout my life. And going back to my childhood, the reason why, and eventually got into that, is that I had been sexually abused as a young child, with no one being aware and no one hearing about it, because I just went into a persona to cope with it. And the realization, so I can now put back in my life, I can go back and look at events and go, that's why I did what I did, and look at where I've got to now. And I'll share, I'm 66, doing another change in my life and another growth and another business. So I'm, And I just think, isn't that fantastic? So I'm quite
Absolutely.
passionate in seeing the positive of that rather than the negative of it.
And really, you've just shared an amazing number of things there. And really, so many things really that you developed unknowingly the most amazing coping strategy to deal with huge, horrible trauma that you were unaware of because you shut it down and blocked it out and came up with another strategy that worked for you rather than the alternative of what you could have done.
Yes.
And then you had the courage, that's the only word that jumps in my head now, to think, hang on, I recognize something's going on, but to explore what was really happening
Yes.
and to get to the bottom of it and ask the questions and be inquisitive enough to go, hang on, I want to know what's going on. I don't want to just accept this or block it out and pretend it's not happening.
Yep. And I can look back early as I was about to go into my first marriage. I had attempted suicide at that point in time, had not, obviously, because I'm here, not been successful. But that was now I look back, that was a really negative coping strategy. Instead of going, which then happened once I moved to Dubbo, going back into that positive coping strategy without knowing it. So in that moment, my non-resourceful strategy, I'm going to attempt suicide. And then the realization as I moved on that my resourceful way of doing it was actually to disassociate, to wear different hats in different environments, that eventually has moved on through that marriage and now into really positive relationship. But that still had periods where I would disassociate. Second marriage, teenage kids, issues around all of those things, including a son that we didn't know had Asperger's, including challenging teenage boys and a whole range of things. So I used resourceful strategies, what I saw as.
Absolutely.
Being able to just, I call it change hats, depending on where I was, depending on what I was doing, what hat did I need to wear to cope in that moment. And I still probably do that today, but not in a disassociative way, because I'm very conscious now that that's what I do.
Wow. Yeah. And really, it's so fascinating. And I feel so honored. And I know you shared this with me, that this was what you were becoming aware of in the 90s when we met. And I remember as a psychologist, not been doing it too long, I was fascinated and thought, wow, this is amazing. We have so much to learn. And I've seen you. I know we didn't have a huge amount of time connecting for about 10 years, and then we've come back into each other's lives in the last 5 to 10 years. And to see the growth in you, to have processed that, to have gotten to the bottom of things and moved forward and used it, as you said before, as a gift, to be able to move forward and go, wow, this is a blessing that I've been able to come up with a strategy that works, and look at how I can turn that around for me and for the other people that I want to impact in my life.
And for me, the other thing I see it is, and some people will really struggle probably with this, if the things that had happened to me, the experiences that I had gone through, so the things as a childhood, the things in my teenage years, my first relationship, a whole range of things, if those things had not happened, then I wouldn't be who I am right now. Exactly. I believe that I couldn't be the coach that I am right now. I couldn't be the wife that I am right now, and the friend, and all of the things that I am. Me right now wouldn't be me right now. It is because of all those experiences and the learnings and the awareness and the curiosity and all of those things. I feel blessed because I believe that I am the best version of who I need to be right now because of all those things.
Yes. And that is the most amazing way to look at the experiences that you've been through rather than getting stuck in the depths of the pain and the trauma. Not that there haven't been periods, of course, where you've had to feel it to heal it, haven't you, really?
Yeah. And
Yes.
I think to me, that's the significance. Look, when we bury it, when we dismiss it, when we don't give it purpose or value, we just either delve deep in it so that we can't see anything else,
Yes.
or we just totally shove it aside, then we don't get the learning from the experience. And for the learning to happen is, I needed to be fetal position on the floor of a car.
Yes.
If I hadn't done that and totally not had those experiences, then I couldn't have learned from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. A very good way to identify that and recognize the gift it was and how it helped shape you into who you are today and really helped build that identity and for you to be really okay and understand who you are.
Yes. And just to share and we were talking fairly traumatic stuff, but even from, as you're aware, about 5 years ago, I had a massive blood clot between my heart and my lungs and finished up in hospital for 10 days. The thing that came out of even that level of experience, so we're not talking trauma, but even that is a challenge. And I believe that all of the things that I've gone through allowed me to be present in that time, to realize the gifts I had around me and the things that I am doing.
Yes.
To the point that I came out of it and realized that even the simple things of going to a walk on a Saturday morning, a park run, and the positive connection to people allowed me to see the positive that came out of that. I've recently, in the last week and a half, had some more blood clots, but I see it not in oh my God, I'm getting old and my body's not great and whatever. I see it as, so what have I learned? And the positive that has come from the medical profession that said, so if you weren't as fit and healthy as you are, then there is a good possibility medically you wouldn't be with us. And so I am not the fittest girl on the block. I am not the skinniest girl on the block, but I am someone that just values on just being present and doing. In order that I've got more opportunities to live life rather than judging myself against somebody else because I'm not as skinny as them or I'm not as fast as them or whatever the case may be. I am who I need to be right now with my walking and my exercise and who I am with my health. I'm where I need to be, irrespective of the blood clots or this event or whatever happens, rather than beating myself up because I'm a big girl. And if I was skinnier, maybe this wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And I know we talked the other night that you said that because you have prioritized your health and focused on you, all your vital signs and blood pressure and things like that are really good. And that is what has helped you survive. So by prioritizing you and your health and well-being, acknowledging trauma and the experiences you've had, but turning it around to how can I take the learnings and the lessons and see the gift in this to work out what to do. But for me, really speaking with you, it's been around making every day count. Being present, living in the moment and enjoying everything that happens regardless of how, challenging it can be at times. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think that's exactly the moment. And I often say to people, but I don't think it was the 5 years ago health scare. It just put more clarity on it, because if not now, when? If not now, when? When do I get excuse my language, when do I get my shit together in order that I can enjoy my life or take another step or do something else or whatever it might be? If not now, when?
When? Yeah, there's never a perfect time, but the reality is when we've experienced significant events, adversity, trauma, whatever we want to call it, we see things through a different lens.
Yes.
We make different choices, different priorities, and we take action and make every day count.
Yes.
Because we
And
see
I
the
think
value of it.
for everyone who, because whatever scale, and I don't think there is a scale, because I don't think there's a good or a bad, just think there is, and depending on who you are, but every event is your event. Your reaction to it is your reaction. But for me, the difference for me is I choose my reaction to be curious, learning. And so what gift is that moving forward? Rather than, poor me, I just missed out, blood clots, week and a half. I just missed out on, doing my 350th park run. Isn't that terrible? And I've missed that and haven't worked for 2 weeks. Isn't that terrible? I just see it as, so it actually has been a gift. It's given me some time because I had to just sit and be present. I've done some training. And what have I learned from that? That if I was probably a bit more focused on my physical activity, then I might have missed that opportunity.
Absolutely.
To learn from this period in my life.
Definitely.
And I probably wouldn't have had as much spare time to have the conversations with you, etc. And I just think that is so powerful. And that's not dismissive of people's trauma.
No, not at all. Absolutely not.
But you can choose how long you want to stay in it.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, my whole aim of speaking to people who've experienced trauma and adversity is looking for those, and you will have heard me talk about it, those breadcrumbs of what are the clues that people who've experienced things and have worked through it and are doing amazing things, what are the clues they're leaving us that we can all learn from? And that is a massive clue.
Yeah. It's it's whatever language you might use. I don't live in what I call a victim mentality. Yes. I work in the field of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm very much about, we have, cause and effect. I choose. It doesn't mean you don't get angry. It doesn't mean you don't feel sad. It doesn't mean that you don't have feelings, because they're not negative or positive. They're a feeling. It means that you can take control of what you do with it.
Yep.
You cannot change the past. I cannot change those things that happened to me. Yep. I can choose how I respond. I can choose how I cope in the moment. And that's how I believe that living at cause is all about, is that I have a choice. And sometimes I choose to be lazy, because in the moment, that is what I need to do for me. And that is actually okay.
And is it really lazy, or is it I'm having a rest because my body needs that to rest and recover and replenish? Yeah.
But again, when we look at that, so I don't see lazy as being negative. And I'm not talking about rest and recuperation. Sometimes it's pure laziness of sitting on the lounge or whatever. And again, the other interesting thing for me is language. So a word and what meaning we attach, because that meaning is from our experiences. So lazy to me is different to what some people might think. Yes. Conversation or curious or whatever it is has a meaning that I'm attaching to it. So that has been a huge shift for me. So not seeing abuse as being a positive or a negative. It's an experience.
Yes. And an experience that you've been able to learn a lot from.
Yes.
To be curious about the impact it's had and work out a very appropriate strategy for you to be able to move forward and make a choice to do things differently as a result of the way you've reframed it to work for you.
Yes. Yeah. And I get quite positive about that, because I am sure that things will happen in the remainder of my life, because in my head, I do not see being 80 or 90 as being old.
Mhm.
So the language, that the meaning I've attached to that is not about old, because old can also have a different meaning. So I see old as probably wisdom and things to come and those things, rather than, as some of my friends do, I'm getting old, I'm coming up for my 70th birthday or whatever it may be, because of how I attach the meaning to it. And I've now chosen, and have for quite a while, to attach meaning that's about curiosity and about where that might go and what that might mean, rather than attaching anger's negative, joy is positive.
Yeah.
It just is a feeling. And it's a very different way of living our life.
So I'm really interested in that, because I think we can all learn so much from that. Was there a specific powerful moment or milestone in your healing process and journey that you made that decision?
I think if we go back, obviously at some point, my mind, my body decided to disassociate.
Yeah.
I had
Because it
no
was the
idea
safest
why.
thing to do and the strategy that was going to keep you surviving
Yes.
and being able to cope.
Can I tell you when or why or whatever? No, because it just was.
Yes.
It just was.
Mm-hmm.
And through periods of time, it was. And early mid-90s, I started to look at things differently and be open to different ways. So interested in, different therapies and different ways of doing things. And there was not one size fit all.
Yes.
Around that time, without really truly being aware of what was happening for me, but just being open to emotionally focused therapy was a way to be. And but I knew I had to leave because I just knew it didn't work.
Yeah.
Why? I had no idea. I just knew that for me, it was about that kept people stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that if you stayed stuck, nothing moved. And I think it was around the same time, as you're aware, I had a very serious back injury, and I had to leave the work that I was doing. I was told that I'd be in a wheelchair in my mid-50s. And don't do this and don't do that and do something else. And around that time, I made a decision that what they were telling me to do wasn't working. Now, I could try something else and I could still finish up in a wheelchair.
Yeah, definitely.
However, if I did something different, maybe things would improve. But I just knew that if I kept doing what I was doing and listening to other people rather than myself, then nothing was going to change. Now, that wasn't connected to my mental health. That was connected to a physical disability issue. It was restricting what I could do. And I knew as I started to work through that I needed to look at other options, started to get curious. And I got curious about getting involved in weights and in the gym rather than physiotherapy or just going for a walk or whatever it was. And as that progressed, and then I became aware about myself, then I started to become aware that just because an expert says you shouldn't lift weights, it's not going to be good for you, it doesn't make it so for everybody. For some it might, but it doesn't make it so for everybody. And I started to realize that same in my life. Just because if I think about bringing up stepchildren or children on the spectrum or things that happen, just because something works for somebody else does not mean that that is the thing that will work for me. Get curious.
Yes. So really for you, it's been curiosity and self-awareness. Very clearly that you had the capacity to be so self-aware and use your curiosity to go, hang on, how does this feel within me, for me? And I'll test things out. Like you said, EFT, you tried it, wasn't for you. You tested something else. So you had the benefit of trusting yourself enough to go, hang on, I'm going to try this. It'll work or it won't work, and adjust along the way. Yeah.
And I think the big clue was that if it failed, and I don't see it as failing, it's about having feedback.
Yes.
To that method. And I often talk about my health issue, physical.
Yeah.
So getting involved in a gym roughly 10 years ago, involved in weights, I couldn't get off a chair without help. I couldn't lift my right leg into the car without holding my pants. And so what could I try and trust?
Yes.
And not have fear of failure. Because you know what, if this doesn't work, I'm no worse off anyway. Eventually what happened was that as I started to do it, in fact, I improved so much so that 2 years ago, I set a world record in powerlifting and lifted 100 kilos squat, 55 bench and a 125 deadlift.
You certainly did. And I've seen the evidence in the video, and oh my goodness, it was absolutely brilliant. And I might even share that in the show notes if you're okay with that, because it really is the most amazing, powerful moment to think you were told you will never do anything. You will end up in a wheelchair, and here you are, an absolute champion, winning a championship in powerlifting.
Yeah. And
amazing.
I see it very physical. So I talk about, so I made a decision to do a triathlon I don't know, similar time. And I hadn't swum, like I pretty well couldn't swim, but the triathlon was in the Macquarie River. You had to swim. I had to swim 150 meters. And when I put my hand up, I suddenly then went, oh, you have to swim in a triathlon.
Yeah, you do.
It's a minor detail.
Oops, I forgot that part.
I forgot that. And I swam with the kids, and I probably came second last.
Doesn't matter, but you swam.
I did it and I completed it. And I think that is now how I live my life.
Yes.
So I don't care. I did Mount Arthur and I was the last person off the line, but I finished. There were people who were actually in front of me that were coming down the trail, and they kept going straight ahead instead of going back onto the trail in order to finish the last bit. I wasn't going to go that far and not finish.
Yes.
However slow I was, however hard it was. And I'm not fast, far from it, but I'm going to finish. I'm going to give it a go. And if the worst that happens, I'm, 2.5 hours and everybody else is an hour and a half, the thing that I sit with right now is that's okay, because I don't compare myself to where others are at.
Yes.
I compare me to where I was at. And when did that moment happen? I can't pinpoint it, but it was probably in the mid-2000s where it was really clear. And the final decision was when I had my blood clot, because the realization was that it confirmed that all my choices were the right choices.
Exactly.
They were not good or wrong.
You followed the breadcrumbs, all the clues in your life, and you could recognize, wow, that's what got me to this moment. And I'm going to live as a result of my choices and the things I have done along the way. So I think having that capacity to recognize that is something many of us don't get.
Yeah.
So I think, again, we have so many things we can learn from you and the way you see things and the value that you're giving us by sharing all of this today.
And I would really like to share is that mine is no more special. I'm no more special because I got a world record. The difference was that I just made a decision to give it a go, whether it be around our mental health, whether it be around our physical health, relationships or whatever. It's when we stay stuck and we are so fearful of giving it a go and failing. And I have failed many, many, many times, and I will continue to fail many, many times.
Absolutely.
But the ability to fail and then see it as what I can, and be curious then to go, what can I learn from it?
Yes.
Let's look at another alternative. What else can I do? And there are a number of things. I'm not lifting at the moment because I have a knee issue. So what else can I do?
Yeah.
Rather than say, oh my goodness, my career's over, I can't do this. But I see it as, so what can I do in the interim? What else can I do? Rather than I failed, I can no longer do this, I'm devastated. That's not saying I don't feel sad and I don't miss it.
Absolutely.
But I see it as, oh, so what else could I do that if I was still powerlifting, I might not do?
Excellent way to look at it. And really, again, you hit the nail on the head before by saying you make a choice and you make a decision and you follow it through, and you're always looking for what else, what's next? How can I be the best version of me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And you need to feel it. You have to acknowledge, like, there'll be grief around losing things along the way, about having to make the changes, but you don't stay stuck in that. You feel it, you experience it, and then you make the choice.
Yes. And I think someone shared with me just recently that, in fact, in some ways, don't make a choice, make a decision.
Yeah.
Don't make a choice, because one of the choices is I could be stuck. One of the choices I could fail. One of the choices, rather than I've just made a decision to do X. You experience X and you get curious about it and you see the value of it or not the value of it or wherever, and then you make another decision.
Yeah, so you course correct if needed, but
Yes.
It's all for you. It's been about decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's right or wrong, you don't know. You make a decision, you do that, you follow it through, and then you make another decision.
Correct.
If you
and
need
so
to.
That is huge for me.
Yes.
And that can be hard work sometimes, because sometimes I don't want to make a decision. I don't want to do the work. But one of the decisions might be that I give myself permission to do nothing, lazy.
Yes. Yep.
I do nothing for a period of time. But the decision is that I'm going to do this for a day, a week, a month. But at the end of a day, a week, or a month, then I have to take action to do something.
But again, you've made a decision.
Yes.
To do nothing. And that is totally okay. You've given yourself permission for that along the way.
Yeah. And that's a very different way for me to approach it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's the decision I made about the things that happened to me in my life. And that was the decision I made about my mental health.
Yeah.
Rather than, beat myself up, or I'm worried, or don't share, because heaven forbid, as a counsellor, here I am with this condition. Who on earth would want to work with me with that condition?
And I think that comes through loud and clear. You know that I've interviewed a number of health professionals, allied health professionals already. And one of the things that I feel really strongly and passionate about is that we are all human beings. Horrible things happen to everyone. And we need to take a stand and show that we aren't impaired because something horrible happened. In fact, it's the opposite. We, because of what has happened to us, have a much deeper ability to understand, to have empathy, and we've lived it and breathed it. So we get it at a deeper level that's not out of a textbook or uni experience or counseling course experience or something like that. It's lived experience, and we have a duty, I think, to pay it forward and to be able to share our experience, our knowledge, our ability to overcome these things with other people to help accelerate their transformation and their ability to move forward. So I absolutely love that you've recognized that it's not an impairment at all. It is a gift, a blessing in many ways, and we will make a decision as to how we navigate our path, whether we stay in that same profession, we adjust it, we course correct, we do whatever.
Yeah.
And we will do whatever was within our own ethics, boundaries, whatever,
Yes.
to be able to continue on the path that is right for us and the people we help.
So the recent challenge was I made a decision at 64. I'm going to own it because I'm comfortable with it. And I'm not a real scale girl, but it will put perspective at 115 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
With I love my wobbly bits. I became a personal trainer. That doesn't fit the industry. Okay. I cannot do a push-up to save my life. I can't. There are a number of things I cannot do.
Yep.
But that does not make me incapable of being a really good personal trainer who can support people who have their own mobility issues or their body image challenges or all of those things, and who do not feel safe with somebody who is standing there young, ripped, can do the best set of burpees you've ever seen or whatever.
Yeah, those were the days.
They were the days. And there is an industry out there. There is very much about if you don't look a certain way and if you can't do certain things, then you can't possibly be considered fit and healthy. And the reason I got into this industry was because I want people to realize that at 64 that I can do things that save my life, that I've probably got the best set of health stats going.
You do.
That, again, have saved my life. The only difference is, and I love this terminology, I'm just voluptuously wrapped, and I have different wrapping to what other people have. And I'll just tell you a little story. So if you buy, say you're going to buy a set of earrings for someone as a gift.
Yep.
If it's for Christmas, we put Christmas wrapping. If it's for their birthday, we put birthday wrapping. If it's for Valentine's Day, we put different wrapping. So depending on the event, it's wrapped a certain way. But the reality is the earrings are still the earrings. The gift is still a gift. It's just wrapped differently. And I talk about myself being voluptuously wrapped. So I had different wrapping.
Gosh, I love it. I'm voluptuously wrapped as well. And I'm going to steal that from you. Yeah. I'm going to put that as a quote this week.
My inner gift of who I am as an individual and as a person is still who I am. The fact that it's wrapped in 115 kilos does not mean that who I am is any less valuable than if you wrapped a gift for someone and you put it in newspaper and gave it to them in newspaper. The gift itself is still as valuable.
Oh, I love that. The way you have articulated that, that warms my heart. I think, we're voluptuously wrapped and we still have so much value within and to give other people. And I think that is such a beautiful reframe and a beautiful way to look at things. Yeah. So just looking at, do you think there's any specific qualities or personal attributes based on your own experience and the coaching that you do with people that you see as being key for moving through trauma and into post-traumatic growth?
I think there's two things. The first thing is an openness to just look at things, that curiosity, that openness to just look at.
Yeah.
Because until you reach that moment of being open, then no matter what is around you, including a whole range of therapy, whatever you want to look at, do, or otherwise, if you are not open to looking at and being curious about it, then you can't move forward. So that to me is the first thing. And I think the second thing is to actually see getting it wrong as a gift.
I love that one.
Because we can't, again, I love stories. So think about learning to drive a car. We sit in the back seat of the car as a kid, and you know what? Driving is really easy from the back seat.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Everyone has a backseat driver.
Until you sit in the driver's seat. And at that point, you suddenly realize you know nothing. You can't do anything. And you are going to stall. You're going to have challenges. You're going to get it wrong. Now, you can choose at that point to keep going and eventually learn to drive, or you can quit. but you're going to get it wrong, because there's no way do you go from the back seat to the front seat and get it right the first time.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
And so I think those two things, the curiosity about how you go about it and the options in different ways, and that openness. But the second one is getting to that point to understand that everybody in this world, no matter how brilliant they are, trust me, maybe look at my video of me doing a squat with a broomstick where everything was so dodgy wrong, just totally and utterly wrong. And yet I'm a world champion with a 100-kilo squat.
Yeah.
I got it wrong. I didn't go from I start and became good at it.
Exactly.
There's that whole period of time that I got it wrong, but I kept going because it's okay to get it wrong.
So persistence.
Yes.
Determination, curiosity, and a willingness to get it wrong.
Yep. And if you do that with everything in your life, it doesn't matter what it is, then you move forward. The moment you go, I'm not going to do it right. If I'm not going to get it right, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that will be a really key turning point, won't it?
Yes.
The decision is to not do it.
Yes.
Everything changes.
Correct. So as you're dealing with your trauma, or you're dealing with your grief, or you're dealing with your relationship, or whatever it may be, that if you stay stuck, because you just, well, I don't know if I did this, if I say this, if I, whatever, if I leave that relationship, for example, will it be better? Will my life be better? Won't it? Well, you know, I don't know.
Exactly. We don't know, do we? We never know.
But if you then are willing to go, well, I'm going to try something. And from whatever happens with that one thing that we do, then look at it, evaluate it, take feedback. Did it work? Didn't it work? Did it help? Could I have done it differently? What was the reaction? And then you make another decision. So based on that, you make another decision. And I think that for me is where I sit with my life, even now, is that do I stay working in powerlifting? Do I stay in PT? Do I do more coaching? I don't know. I don't know what my life will look like. But I do know that if I don't try something, then nothing changes. In fact, things go backwards.
Yes, exactly. Nothing changes, but it also usually goes backwards, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because that forward momentum is needed to keep moving on. We can stagnate. We can stay somewhere for a while. We give ourselves permission.
Yes.
But we want to continue to move forward whilst ever we can.
Yes.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today, Sue? Because I know you have lots of amazing wisdom, and anything else that comes up for you, like maybe something else that could help our listeners navigate their trauma or adversity and move forward?
The only other thing I would say, and I think this is crucial for those of us in the industry, or those of us who are coaches or whoever, or have skills, and we see ourselves as we can do it ourselves. Again, another piece of wisdom that got given to me. No matter how skilled we are, no matter how what we have, we're the person in the jar. We can't see the label. We can't read the label. We need somebody outside of it to read that label and help us in the jar get outside of the jar to read the label. So for those of us in the industry or doing anything, as a powerlifter, I still need a coach, even though I'm a PT.
Yes.
As a coach in mental health and in the mindset field, I still need a coach because I can't see those things that are my labels outside of my jar.
Yes. Very powerful. And that's it. That really the bottom line is we can't do anything completely on our own. We need a support network, whether that's a coach to help us read the jar, to help us get out of the jar, a friend, a mentor. It doesn't matter, does it?
No.
But we can't do everything ourselves. There needs to be a support network, and we can make a decision as to who that support network is going to be.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's the final. So for those in the industry that are listening to that those who aren't or whatever, again, just be willing to understand, no matter how skilled you are and how experienced you are, that you're going to reach a point where you actually need someone to support you to look at the things that you can't see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's very insightful. So, Sue, as we move to wrapping the conversation up, where can our listeners find out more about you and find you online?
Okay, so I'm Facebook, and very simple, nothing terribly exciting. I have a Facebook page that is just Sue Harrod, and it shares who I am authentically, not just me as a coach, but who I am, so that you can get to know me for me, with all my quirks and interesting things. And anybody who wants to know more then can just get in touch, because I then will just love having a conversation.
Yeah.
And we see where that takes us, because who knows, again, that curiosity of a relationship and where that just leads the pair of us in that direction. But yeah, just find me on Facebook, and
Excellent.
then we go from there. I'm not tech savvy. I'm just owning
Makes
that.
two of us.
That's actually okay. But it's about that conversation, and we see where that takes us.
So conversation and connection. So I'll put that in the show notes so everyone can find us, and I'm sure people will get in contact with you, because you really are a delight to have in my orbit. I love connecting with you, and I know that people will have got so much value and so many tips from your conversation with me today. So I honestly feel completely blessed and honored to have had this conversation, and I'm so grateful to you, Sue.
My pleasure. And we're meant to be in each other's worlds when we're meant to be in each other's worlds.
Absolutely. Definitely. Thanks so much, Sue. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me in this episode of Growing Tall Poppies. It is my deepest hope that today's episode may have inspired and empowered you to step fully into your post-traumatic growth, so that you can have absolute clarity around who you are, what matters the most to you, and to assist you to release your negative emotions and regulate your nervous system so you can fully thrive. New episodes are published every Tuesday, and I hope you'll continue to join us as we explore both the strategies and the personal qualities required to fully live a life of post-traumatic growth and to thrive. So if it feels aligned to you and really resonates, then I invite you to hit subscribe, and it would mean the world to us if you could share this episode with others who you feel may benefit too. You may also find me on Instagram at Growing Tall Poppies and Facebook, Dr. Natalie Green. Remember, every moment is an opportunity to look for the lessons and to learn and increase your ability to live the life you desire and deserve. So for now, stay connected, stay inspired, stand tall like the tall poppy you are, and keep shining your light brightly in the world. Bye for now.